Hello, Dr. Vikki Petersen here. I recently had a viewer ask me if it was safe to eat sourdough bread on a gluten-free diet. And she said she had seen a lot of data on the internet stating that was the case. So it made me realize it's something that I've been meaning to do a video about. I'll also be doing a blog on this to go into more detail on the studies. But suffice to say, the answer is no. So the short answer, no. It's not safe to consume sourdough bread on a gluten-free diet. Now, let's look into some of the studies. There was a study, I'll be looking down a little bit for some of my notes. So there was a study in 2011, and it involved 13 patients who had known celiac disease. There were 3 types of bread that these 13 people were put on. So they were put in groups. I think it was 5, 6, and 3 or something like that. But that doesn't exactly add up to 13, but you know what I mean. There were 3 groups, 13 people total. And so there was regular bread. There was bread that was hydrolyzed through the sourdough process, so the protein was broken down somewhat, but there was still over 2,000 parts per million of gluten in this bread. And if you're somebody who avoids gluten, you know that what's designated as safe is under 10 parts per million. So this was 200 times that. And then the third group, and this was bread made in a laboratory, because I know you're going to ask me, how do I find this bread? So the third group was given bread that had 8 parts per million, so under that safe threshold of 10 sourdough bread. So not surprisingly, because it was under the 10, the people in the latter group with the 8 parts per million felt fine eating the bread. Their blood test looked fine. When they looked at their lining of their small intestine, their villi, those looked fine. So everything was fine with 8 parts per million of gluten, but that's not news. We already know that. What was news in that particular study was the fact that it was wheat bread, you see. But again, it was made in a laboratory, and there's been no, here it's been 8 years later, and there's been no manufacturing process that's come out with, hey, we're that sourdough bread made from wheat that only has 8 parts per million. So obviously that wasn't so easily done that they've turned it into a bread corporation. Now, the first group was given regular bread, so not surprisingly, the people did not do well on that, and their blood showed the negative change of them eating gluten. Their lining of their villi showed the negative change as well. But I thought what was interesting was out of those, let's see, it was 6 patients in that category, only 2 dropped out. So they were eating regular wheat bread, they were celiacs. Their testing showed a negative change, but only 2 out of 6 of them actually dropped out of the study because their symptoms were so bad. Which brings us to the next study, and this was 26 people, 2017 I believe, and 26 people following a gluten-free diet, and they were fed sourdough bread that was fermented for more than 12 hours. And what happens there is that the bacteria and yeast in the culture do break down some of the gluten. And what they found, however, was that even though symptomatically the people eating the bread felt okay, they didn't do well. So, and I think that's really where the distinction comes in, and I think that's where the danger comes in, is that people are they try this because they hear it on the internet and they don't feel badly, because everybody's different when it comes to their reaction to gluten. You can be a sort of a silent sufferer as far as your GI tract is concerned. So in other words, not really notice any terribly overt symptoms, but then you do the blood test or you look at the lining of their small intestine and, you know, havoc has occurred. And of course, that's really putting you at risk for a lot of different diseases, including cancer. So it's really, the bottom line is really, you know, what the tests show, and not necessarily what just symptomatically how you feel. Also, on this latter group with the sourdough bread that was fermented for more than 12 hours, it had lower what's called ATIs, which is amylase trypsin inhibitors. So ATIs are known to create inflammation, and also FODMAPs were lower in the sourdough group, but it really didn't change the tests as far as the follow-up and how the individuals did on the bread. So the bottom line is there's no strong research to show that individuals can consume sourdough other than that 2011 study I started with, which became misconstrued because it really was wheat bread and it really was sourdough. It was just manufactured in a lab to almost make it ungluten, you know, because there was only 8 parts per million of gluten in it. So again, this bread is not on the market, I'm sorry to say, but by the time you've hydrolyzed and broken down the protein so much that there's hardly any gluten in it, yeah, you started with wheat, which was great, but we can't call that a bread anymore that we can get on the market because it doesn't exist. So of course, no surprise that people did well with that. They were very effective at getting rid of the gluten, and that's really the problem. So there you go. Sorry, not good news for those who are out there eating sourdough, but just do keep in mind there's a big distinction between I didn't feel bad eating it and what your blood says. So that's very, very important, is to have those kind of tests. Here at the office we use the wheat zoomer test. I like it because it doesn't just look at TTG and anti-gliadin antibodies, but it looks at like 20 different aspects of this gluten molecule and how it can affect your health. So you can really see how your immune system is reacting. So if you've been playing with the sourdough for a while and you think it's okay, let me know and we'll get you the test and we'll prove it out and really see if it's a problem. So until next time, I wish you very good health. If your health is not the way you want it to be, please reach out. That's why we're here. The telephone number here at the clinic is 408-733-0400. And you can also visit us at the website, rootcausemedicalclinics.com. We do specialize in gluten and celiac disease, and it's something that, as I said, we sometimes just want to hear what we want to hear when it comes to food and hope we can somehow cheat. And it's just not the case at the moment. But what is important is to find out, are you really sensitive or not? And then what do we do about it? How do we regain your best health? I'll see you soon.